Okay, so you're looking to, we're talking about if it's congruent or similar. There's a difference between those two. Congruent means what? Same size and same shape, which means if it's the same size and the same shape, it's exactly the same. Congruent means two things are exactly the same. Similar does not mean they have the same size. So similar triangles, the corresponding sides are proportional. What does that mean? What does that mean? So first of all, what does corresponding mean? Corresponding sides. What does that mean? Yeah? To figure out which sides are corresponding, you have to refer to the angles, right? If this angle here is 60 and this angle is 60, you always want to put the triangles in the same position. Then you can tell which sides are corresponding. AC would correspond to DE. It means they're in the same relative position, okay? And how can you tell if they are proportional? What does that word mean? What does proportional mean? So proportional, there's one thing that you can look at is the scale factor, and they talked about that in the textbook as well, right? And my example with rice here, 1 cup of water for every 2 cups of rice. Well, if I want to make 4 cups of rice, you could do this 2 ways. You could figure out the scale factor. How do I get from 2 cups of rice to 4 cups of rice? Multiply by 2. Do you remember this from elementary school? So what would I have to do with the water? Multiply by 2. That's the scale factor. You guys remember this? Yeah. So I would need 2 cups of water. So to see if two triangles are similar, you're trying to see if they are proportional. Did it increase by the same amount or did it decrease by the same amount? Right? You can look at, for the scale factor, you can see how it's either increased in size or decreased in size. They have the same shape. Okay, so similar triangles will always have the same shape and they will be proportional. And you mentioned it earlier, the corresponding angles have to be equal. Okay, so corresponding angles, I'll add that here. Corresponding angles are equal, and that's because they're the same shape, right? They've just, think of it as like stretched or compressed. Hey. Okay, so let's do the first example here. It says create a triangle that is similar to triangle ABC, but not congruent. So we're not drawing one that's exactly the same. You're drawing one that's similar, so you can make it up. We're just going to make up a triangle that would be similar to that using all these rules. So now it said, we need to figure out, is triangle DEF, so this triangle, similar to triangle ABC? Let's figure that out. How can we figure out if they are similar? What can we do to calculate it? Do we have side lengths that are proportional? That are corresponding, sorry. Okay, so this side corresponds to this side. So what should we do to figure out if they are proportional? We're trying to see if it's proportional. We're trying to see if this triangle is larger than this triangle, but if they shrunk it by the same number every time, the same scale factor, right? So what would we do with these two numbers? These are the two sides that are corresponding. What would we do with those numbers? What did we just do? Yep, divide. So let's do 2.4 divided by 1.2. What is it? What's 2.4 divided by 1.2? 2. Which means that this side, which corresponds to that side, if I take this number and I divide it by that number, if they're similar, what would my answer be? 2. Let's see if it is. 3.7 divided by 1.5 is equal to 2. Yes or no? No. It's equal to 2.47. So are these two triangles similar? No. No. That's it. Okay, let's do one that's larger. So we're trying to create one that's similar. Let's call it, so this is A, B, C. This will be D, E, F. And you have to label it in the same order. okay? So this would be 60, right? Corresponding angles have to be equal. And we're enlarging it, so just, what are you going to do to each side? Pick a number. What do you want your scale factor to be?
4.
Somebody said, let's increase each side by a scale factor of 5. Sure. So if I multiply 2.4 times 5, what do you get? Okay, so 12 centimeters. So what do you have to do to every single side to make sure that it's similar? I can't just multiply this by 5 and then multiply that by 2. It's going to be distorted. So what do I have to do to each side? Multiply it by 5 and tell me the new dimensions. That's it. So this would be 16.5 centimeters. And what would FE be? 18.5 centimeters. Now, they haven't given us any other angles, so we can't label the other two angles. We can say that triangle ABC is similar to triangle DEF because we've shown that the corresponding angles are equal and the corresponding sides are proportional. Another way that we can check to see if the corresponding sides are proportional is you can figure out what are the ratios of the corresponding sides. So let's figure out which sides are corresponding. AC corresponds with what? DF. If they're in the same position, it's easy to see which sides correspond. So let's figure out the ratio of AC and DF. Oops. So we would do 2.4 divided by 12, right? To find a ratio, you can turn it into a fraction and we'll divide. What is the answer? What's 2.4 divided by 12? 0.2. Okay, so let's check the other sides that are corresponding. CB corresponds with FE, so let's find the ratio of 3.7 divided by 18.5. What do you get? 0.2. Obviously, it should be the exact same answer. If we use the same scale factor, then they should all have the same ratio, right? So what's the last thing we can use to check? AB corresponds to DE. Let's figure out the ratio. So we would take 3.3 over 16.5. Please make sure when you're finding the ratios, you are going in the correct order. If I'm starting, let's call this triangle 1. It's triangle 1 over triangle 2. Triangle 1 over triangle 2. Triangle 1 over triangle 2. If I flipped it around, would you get the same ratio? Like if I did 16.5 divided by 3.3, we would get 2, and then you can't compare them. So you have to go in the correct order. And what is 3.3 divided by 16.5? So yes, this is another way to prove that they're similar. Okay?